So there's a lot to talk about in the housing market this week. CPI, mortgage interest rates, the bond market. Mr. Frost, let's jump into it. So we came off the good news last week with the CPI report. And so the mortgage market was closed Friday last week. It is now a week later. Walk us through the result of that, getting into Monday last week, and kind of we'll work our way into the Realtor.com report at the end of today's video.
Yeah. So we were just talking about somebody earlier, and I was like talking them to an amusement park, and it's because or an amusement park ride, because like once you're on it, you're stuck on this thing, and you're like, you don't know if it's going to be entertaining or if it's going to be a complete waste of time.
Yeah.
And so I think about what happened last week with the CPI numbers and like what's happening economically is like that was really just touching back on that CPI number came back low, and that's a big gauge for Fed, like for inflation in our country, right? That's the prices we're paying for stuff, right?
Yep.
Like, how much are your lifesavers? How much is, your 12-year-old daughter's sugar face scrub that smells like candy canes because you got to have candy cane smells before Christmas, not after. It's like a whole thing, right?
Sure.
And so these prices came down, and it really made them believe that inflation has now peaked, and they're not saying there's going to be like this downward trend in rates. Like they're not just going to go down. Like they're not going to the bottom's not going to drop out of them, right? And I say it's like we entered the amusement park, right? So we got through all the pain. We did the whole road trip. Inflation went up. We dealt with all the nightmares. We had a flat tire. Like the thing fell off the roof, like the whole thing. Now we're in the amusement park, right? So we're getting better, right? Like we've gotten past that. And the market's going to continue to have a little bit of a roller coaster effect. You're going to wait in lines, and they're going to go up a little bit, and then you're going to get on the rides, and they're going to go down. Like it's just going to be like everything's good, and then it kind of stinks. And it's good, and then it stinks. But the whole thing is that the general direction has started to change. So we saw on Monday, which is very normal after we had a 206 basis point rally in the mortgage-backed security world, and then the treasury markets, the 10-year treasury.
That was like Thursday last week,
right?
Yeah.
Markets were closed on Friday, Veterans Day.
That's when you and I made our last update, and I was high-fiving you.
Yeah.
And so, all right, so that's the last time we made a video. So since then, the market's reopened, and what happened?
Yep. So Monday, the Fed came out, and they did what they always do. They try to cool things down. Like they don't want the stock market to go absolutely bananas and the prices of these things to go up and the price of stocks to go up. Like they're trying to not do that right now, right? So the Fed came out and they did what they always do. Hey, this is good. Like this is a step in the right direction. We're very far off. Like we believe that there needs to be more rate hikes. I think one of the Federal Reserve members came out on Tuesday or Wednesday and said we need to see the Fed funds rate at 7%.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Almost double from where we're at now, which was totally insane. So we lost some of that gain, which we knew was going to happen. We knew that there was going to be a knee-jerk reaction on Thursday when we got the CPI number. And lenders really kind of kept a lot of that off their rate sheet, right? Closed Friday. Monday got the bad news. Rate sheets for lending in the mortgage world didn't really change. They didn't change that much because they held some back. They knew that the market was going to kind of whipsaw back Monday. And then Tuesday, we got into another great economic report, right? So that's what we call the producer price index. So that's the prices like Walmart is paying for goods on their shelves. And I say Walmart specifically because they came out and they're refusing to pay higher prices. They're looking at the prices of goods they're selling, and they're telling their suppliers, like, we are not paying these inflation adjusted prices for the same goods, especially if logistics are opening up and there's, the supply channels are opening up. They refuse to do it. So we saw, we're looking for the producer price index to decrease by 0.2%.
Yeah.
I'm always trying to say 0.2 now instead of 0.2%.
Right.
To sound like a professional. And it actually dropped 0.4%. So it was like double the good news, right?
Yeah.
So it came down double the amount that it was supposed to. So that again bolstered kind of that sentiment in the market, like, hey, things are going in the right direction. Like the Fed talks, which by the way has no business experience, right?
Right.
So I learned that this week on a video I was watching, but those guys have all college professors and they've worked in government their whole lives and in the Federal Reserve and things like that, but none of them have actually like managed or run big businesses.
Well, of course not.
Which is crazy.
Well, of course not. And I don't want to get too off track, but like you say that and I say, of course not. People that go through that traditional education path that are responsible for many, many things, many decisions, influence millions of people. I mean, most of those folks have never walked the walk.
No.
They've never built a business. They've never done any of that. And so, yeah, I mean, that's a whole nother topic. I do want to mention something funny. So last week, you said something about being professional or whatever. In the comments last week, a woman commented about your hat.
Oh, she did?
Yeah, she goes,
Oh, no.
can we please dress our age or something? The guy looks like a
no.
14-year-old boy.
Oh, yeah. I love it.
I love it too. So
You know what the problem? My head is so like I have no hair, right? And so
I love the hat.
one of the things about it is that my head is either cold or sunburnt. And so
Yeah,
the
it's
hat,
cold.
and you know what? I like to wear it backwards because I can see better.
Yeah,
don't know.
I love the
That's just my
hat. That's
thing.
your
Yeah.
style. That's your
Yeah,
brand.
I'm 41 years old. I have 3 kids, and I'm the dad that wears a backwards hat.
That's your brand, and I
Yeah.
love it. All
And
right,
I like ankle socks.
I love
don't
it
know.
too. So give us an update on just mortgage interest rates. Where
Yeah.
are they hovering? Where are they at?
Yeah, so we're again coming from that time, like we're like over 7%. So Fannie or Freddie Mac publishes like an average mortgage interest rate, and they had, right as they published it, being over 7% for the first time in like I don't know,
Long
years.
time.
I don't know what it was. It came back off of that like right away.
Sure.
So we touched that and came back down, and so loans that I'm originating this week, you're looking at like under 6.5. I didn't do anything above 6.5% this week. That's without buying points, like well qualified and even middle of the road qualified people are getting under 6.5. So you're talking
It's phenomenal.
like 6.25, 6.375, somewhere in there. All of our government stuff these days, depending, I mean, everybody's a little bit different,
Yeah.
but we're looking at most of those rates have a 5 in front of them.
I mean, that's
And
massive.
that's pretty amazing.
It is amazing because again, you don't. I mean, no media outlets are sharing that.
Yeah.
So
No,
a lot of
course
the
not.
people in our industry are still, pretty concerned,
Yeah.
with mortgage interest rates. But the reality, and when you have the facts, when you're writing mortgages for most of the time on a conventional side, 6.25%, 6.5%. You just told me before we started recording that you had a great week. It was busy, right?
Busy week,
You're
yeah.
starting to see more buyer activities, and so when we're talking about interest rates, where do you think we're headed as we look ahead for the rest of November and as we get into December? Can we expect mortgage rates to continue to go down, or do you feel like there's something that may bring them back up? Because that's the big argument, right? That interest rates are going to go up to 10, 11, 12%.
Yeah, for sure. So in speaking of that, so I did speaking of like dressing my age and stuff. So I listened to AM 950
Of course
this
you
morning
do.
because every other radio station had a commercial on. So I'm
Yeah.
like, all right, I'm going to AM 950. And that Freddie Mac average 30-year interest rate had its biggest single week decrease in average interest rate. It went from like 7.16% to 6.61%. Which was in 40 years, the largest decrease that it's had in 1 week. So that was kind of an interesting thing, just to give you an idea, again, of what's
Of how big they dropped.
Yeah, and I haven't seen that anywhere, and I'm always deep in the news. I heard that on AM radio
That's so
of all
funny.
places. But
Well, it was so funny real quick, let me jump in for 1 second. When we reported that last week, we got so much pushback. Like people
Yeah.
just refused to believe it.
Yeah.
And then in the following couple of days, everyone started reporting on it, like what you're saying. And I hope that people from our last update now are like, well, geez, I mean, I have to really pay attention.
Right.
I can't just read the doom and gloom headlines. I got to get the facts.
100%. So as far as the rest of the year, there's going to be some economic data. It's fairly light because this is the time of year that traders and market watchers and all these people are kind of starting to like take a little bit of a break, right? They all go on their big, the big bankers and all that stuff go on their big vacations and stuff. We do have a Fed meeting coming up in just a couple weeks. And
14th of December, I think. Is that when it is?
or like the 2nd, maybe. I don't know.
Okay.
It's coming up. But they that meeting, they are going to raise the rates again. And so the idea, again, like the Wall Street bets that they're going to raise it 0.5%.
Sure.
So that'll be kind of interesting to see. It'll be that press conference after to see what Jerome Powell says, what will happen or what their next course is going to be, or kind of, again, their sentiment or their vibe for the younger crowd, for the backwards hat crowd.
Yeah, there you go.
So that'll be interesting to see. I think though that after the last press conference where he really pissed in the Cheerios, right, where he ruined everybody's day, I think now that he's done that, I don't think the market's going to be as sensitive to that rhetoric or rhetoric, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I don't think the market's going to be as sensitive to some of that because it's like, You know, you say it's like when gas prices go over $3 a gallon. Like once you get hit in the face with that, it's not that bad when they go to like $3.50 or something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I continue for the rest of I think for the rest of the year we are going to stay. I don't think we're going to see like a major drop. I would not be surprised if we see high fives on conventional loans. So I wouldn't be surprised to see that start trickling into some rate sheets toward the end of the year. And I think as time goes on, especially into January, we're really going to start seeing them come down. I saw today, it was on CNBC that rents were down had the coolest month that they've had in like 2 years or something for rent prices. And so if you remember, if we go back to a lot of that economic inflation data, the biggest driver, 39% of that data is driven by rents, right? Or shelter costs.
Right.
And
That's
now we're seeing, look, we're starting to see these little things trickle in, like, hey, this is going to contribute to that. And I think that's where we're going to start to see this inflation, the decrease in inflation accelerate going into next year.
Yeah. I mean, I think that is a good segue into talking maybe, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but why we believe that rates will continue to trend downward, because every fact that we have, every data point that we have suggests that we are heading, if not already, into a recession.
Yeah.
And one of the things that happened this week, there's a great report that you have that talked about all the massive layoffs, right?
Yeah.
And so one of the factors when we look at recession is unemployment and how that affects mortgage interest rates. So let's talk about
lagging effect too. It's
that's
the
exactly
last
right.
thing, everything the Fed's doing, it's the last thing that Donkey Kong looks at.
Exactly
I
right.
confirmed it is Donkey Kong.
Okay, good.
He's the guy in the city.
So I want to talk about some of these major companies
I'll
first.
rifle them off. I'm going to rifle them off.
All right, do it. Yes.
So layoffs announced this year, right? So again, remember the last recession was jobs, right? That was a big thing. And while this won't be the same, but think about it. So Twitter cutting 50% of its workforce. If you don't know what's happening at Twitter, you have to wake up.
Crazy.
Facebook cuts 13% of its staff, which is 11,000 jobs. So
wow.
There's over 150,000 employees there.
Yeah.
Snapchat cutting 20% of its workforce. Shopify 10%. Netflix 450 jobs. Microsoft 1,000 jobs. Salesforce 1,000 jobs. Robinhood 31%. Amazon has announced a hiring freeze. Apple has paused almost all hiring, and Google is reducing hiring. So think about it. I mean, these are all things that haven't hit the markets yet, and they will,
right?
Because these people are on severance packages and they're receiving unemployment, and we're starting to see first-time unemployment claims rising. So I'm not trying to paint a doom and gloom picture for you, but what I'm trying to say is that every single time there's been a recession, interest rates go down, and the housing market is the Robin Hood of that recession, right? So they're the ones that pull us out of that recession. They're the housing market. And we said this before. Remember in like March of 2020, we're like, when there's that big dip in housing and you're like, it's your thing. You said, I don't think it's going to be a U-shaped recovery. It's going to be a V.
Right.
And that V happened, right?
Yep.
Which we'll get into why it was a bad thing. But, there's the yield spread, the difference in the yield spread right now. So it's a negative yield curve right now, which is kind of interesting. That's like, and for every different increment of time in these bonds is inverted, this yield curve, which is, there's really no better. I mean, that's like just a technical sign beyond like the GDP coming in low 2 times in a row. And then you've got this yield spread. You've got job layoffs coming. You've got the stock markets are down. Like all these things are happening. Like recessions don't get called when they happen.
Yeah. Well, all right, let me just try to what I want to do in these weekly updates in this in the content that we're making is help people that are listening to this or watching this understand this dynamic between, really it's economics 101, but to understand inflation, recession, and how both of those things affect mortgage interest rates, which ultimately affect the housing market.
Right.
And so the thing is, and I just want to try to put a nice bow on this for people listening to this, real estate agents, mortgage loan officers, buyers, sellers, whoever.
Simplify all my nonsense.
Yeah, I want to really try to gump this down, right? So inflation goes up like crazy as a result of supply and demand because the economy was doing so well.
An abundance of money.
That's right. And so it drove prices up like crazy, right?
Yep.
Too many dollars chasing too few goods.
Yep.
So prices go up like crazy. So as a result, the Federal Reserve says, well, man, we got to bring prices down. We've got to fight inflation. And how we're going to do this is take some of those dollars out of the market. Well, how do we do that? Let's raise our interest rates so people stop spending.
Yep.
What they're trying to do, I mean, the whole definition of a recession is pull back spending.
Right.
Now, what I think people are missing, because here's what they're missing. You can't have mortgage interest rates going up in a recession. It's almost, I don't know if it's ever happened, to your point. Right. I don't think it's ever happened in the history of the world. So I want people to understand, who's watching this, to say, okay, on one side, this is that chicken or the egg. On one side, if we are heading to a recession, which we are, then it is virtually impossible for mortgage interest rates to increase.
Right.
Those two things can't be true.
Right.
So when you guys at home or wherever you're watching or listening to this see people say, well, mortgage interest rates are going to go up, which concern people in the real estate industry because it brings out demand, housing market slows down, which is what's happened over the last 90 days.
Yep.
When you hear people say mortgage interest rates are going to go to 10%, the only way for that to be true is if we were not headed towards a recession.
Right. And if we were not doing any of these things to combat inflation, or if inflation was 18%.
Or, or unemployment wasn't on its way up.
Right.
So the reason why, like people see, oh wow, why is unemployment so important? Why does everybody keep talking about unemployment and all these layoffs? You know, because on one hand, right, somebody might say that. I heard somebody in a video say this, like, well, that's not a good thing. That's not a good thing. Why is the Fed trying to raise unemployment, right? Why are they trying to damage the economy? Actually, you know who it was? Who didn't get Economics 101 yet again? Just constantly, Grant Cardone.
Really?
He doesn't, it's amazing. That's a whole nother story.
Yeah.
Like how exposed he gets in some of his content.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't understand why these layoffs were happening and the economic impact of it.
Yeah.
And why the Fed is trying to do that.
Right.
And he couldn't understand. He's like, why are we doing this? Literally, he said, I don't understand.
Yeah.
And so for all of you that maybe not make sense of it, the reason we're doing that is to pull interest rates back down eventually during the recession so that things like the housing market can rebound and keep moving.
Right. And there's a couple layers to that too. So the function of the market during a recession lowers interest rates because it creates more demand for these safer investments because the stock market's going down, right?
Yep.
Your stock prices are down. So that's one thing. Number two is quantitative easing.
Yeah.
That is the easiest lever that this Fed, that's why we're in this boom and bust cycle that this Fed does, is they take things so far up.
That's true.
Because they know that they can go around
Yep.
and they just make some changes with their balance sheet and all of a sudden interest rates go down. All the contractors go back to work. All of a sudden, everybody needs new TVs. They need new tiles. They need new
bar
stools
man.
and all that kind of thing. So it's a very easy lever for them to pull. And another thing that's interesting about these layoffs is they aren't laying off commission plus salary salespeople. And they're not laying off, these people in like these outward producing roles. They're laying off people in human resources, which make it a great place to work. They're laying off people in research and development.
Yeah.
And these kind of things that bring new products to the market that drive increased stock prices and make that product sexier. They're not keeping a $200,000 a year research and development manager.
Yeah.
Like during a time when people aren't buying as much of your stuff.
Yeah.
Retooling, downsizing, and then looking at growing as they come out of that recession.
And I will say something about the layoffs that nobody reports on. Again, I'm a big point of comparison, right? I think it's hard to draw from data without comparing it to something else.
Yeah.
The one thing that nobody talks about or reporting on that I see is, yes, there's massive layoffs. And yes, all these companies, including real estate companies that are letting go of people and mortgage companies letting go of people. But what nobody reports on, Steve, is how many people they hired over the past 2 years.
Yeah.
And so
100%.
Right? So you have to look and say, wow, if a company had, I'm just making something up.
Yeah.
If a mortgage company had 1,000 people, and because demand was so high over the last 20 months that they grew to 3,000.
Yep.
And they let go of, call it 1,000 people. They're still net 2,000. They're still up 1,000 employees. Nobody reports on that.
Right,
they just reported on they let go of 1,000 people. Well, we let go of 1,000 people because in the last 20 months, we needed a lot of help.
Right.
And so that's something to keep in context as well. So, all right, let's get back
Let's get away from that. Let's talk about how bad the housing market's doing.
All right, so let's talk about the housing market. So, Realtor.com, every week, I love it. They put out a report every single week, and so this week they report on 4 different topics. So let's talk about the first one: median list price. And so the list price grew by 11% year over year. This is the crazy thing. As people are talking about home prices falling, this, that, or the other thing, I mean, the list price grew, right? That's not sold price. I get it. And that's not average home price. But home prices aren't dropping the way that I think people are leading others to believe.
It's an activity recession.
That's right.
Not a price recession.
Yeah, that's a great point. Meaning, go deeper.
So there's still a limited supply of homes. So there's 2 things that are keeping people in their homes, right? There's nothing better, right? So what are you going to upgrade to? And rates, there's what are you going to get that's better? It's still inventory's up, right? Inventory's up 45% year over year or something for this time of year, which is normal.
That's right.
Inventory always increases this time of year.
Yep.
But the other part of it is there's rate lock.
Yeah.
Right. So so many people refinanced at such low rates that they don't have to, people will say, I am not going to sell my home or discount the sale of my home because I need that money knowing that rates are higher to achieve what payment I want on my new house.
Right.
And the thing is, it's just being on the street, I see it and I feel it so much differently than you get it in the news because 1, it's delayed, and 2, it's skewed. But my buyer business picked up immediately. Over the last week was really, you could really sense a different a feeling in the market, and that's because as soon as these rates drop enough, and people that were on the sidelines, because if you think about it, a $250,000 loan at 7% and 6 3/8% is $150 a month.
Right.
That's starting to feel good because we got some context now.
Let's go. Right.
We saw what it was.
It's a good point.
So as these rates come down, there's going to be more demand for these homes. Builders are not building spec homes. There's not a bunch of condos going up.
Yeah.
And then there's, for what homes that are what they say, like replacement homes, right? So if a home's destroyed by fire, there's still a family that has to go somewhere.
That's exactly right. And let me show you this really quick. And I love, and I'll give credit where credit's due, Redfin also has great U.S. housing data that comes out every single month. Let me share my screen so the audience can see this real quick. Yeah, I want to show this to you guys. All right. So if you look at my screen right now, all right, so this is sales price. We're not talking about list price now, okay? This is closed sales price. Right now, year over year, home values are still up 3% year over year. We haven't seen them fall. So when people are saying, oh, home prices are falling, they're talking about the point of how high they are going in value, right? And so if you look at the chart, you say, okay, there's 2019, 2020, 2021. That's the blue arrow or line, red and orange. If you see where we're at right now, we're still above, even though year over year home values are up 3%, we're still way above where we were at pre-pandemic over the past 2 years, where we've seen record high home prices.
Right.
And so that's, again, I like to show comparison, and I like to give people context.
Yeah,
because you can take the average sales price that reached an all-time high of $440,000 and say, okay, well now the average sales price to that graph is $400, call it, and say, wow, that dipped, right? But compared to what, right?
Right.
And so
exactly.
It's just important. I mean, home values are still up. That's the point.
Right.
That's
the
point.
There's not. For you're going into a recession, you're going to see foreclosures pick up. You're going to see activity we're 100% in a home purchase activity recession.
For sure, there's no doubt,
is way down, driven by mortgage rates. The thing is there's so much data out there now, and the U.S. consumer is so much smarter that they're looking at it and they're saying, we know rates are going to go down. There is enough we know that, and now we're going to play that. We're going to sit on the sidelines. But what nobody thinks about is the chicken or the egg thing, right? So as soon as rates go down enough where everybody's feeling ready to go and get in a house, well, there's still no more houses.
Yeah.
So what happens? Money's cheap enough again. Let's get in there and let's start making some offers on homes. And all of a sudden you've got home prices going back up or stabilizing.
Yeah.
Right. So again, that's why I just don't see that, Matt. Will home prices come down? Yes, they have to. That
Absolutely.
is not a bad thing. It was unsustainable
Yeah.
for home prices to go up 20% a year. Like that's insane.
Yeah, it's just a crash that we think that everyone's talking about. That's
Right.
not going to happen. So median listing price grew by 11% year over year. New listings, which is a measure of sellers putting their homes up for sale, were again down, dropping 18% from 1 year ago. This marks the 19th week year over year declines in homeowners listing their home for sale. So, yes, inventory is growing, and it's up 45% from about a year ago as a result of the lack of sales. But there's still people on the sideline, to your point, that are not listing. And so as soon as these mortgage rates come down, I think we can see a big spike in the spring. The only other thing that they reported on this week worth mentioning is that days on market homes are selling a tad bit slower, which is about 8 days slower than this time last year. So it'll be interesting. There's a couple, I think, reports coming out worth mentioning in the next couple of days.
So the next couple of days, we're going to get, and you're going to see the fear mongering and the foreclosure fairies and, all the, like how bad the market's going to get. Like we're going to see a lot of housing data next week.
Yeah. What's coming out next week?
I believe, and it might even be coming out today. It's existing home sales, which is really the big one.
Mm-hmm.
So earlier this week, we saw a lot of information around new home construction.
Yeah.
And so, those numbers really came down big time. Housing starts and completions. And going back to what you're saying about listings and things like that, these builders learned their lessons before, right?
100%.
They learned their lesson and that they're not going to go out and build spec homes. Well, I will tell you from hands-on experience, building a home today it's not as expensive as everybody would say, right? Like you're not going to go out there and pay like millions of dollars for, like the prices are fine and you can get it the way you want it, but the process of building a home is hard.
Yeah.
Like it's not like you're not going to the GMC dealer and picking the options on your new Yukon.
Right.
Where you're like, I want leather on this and you get it. Like building a home is a major undertaking, and there's a move and a sale and a buy and, like painting and toilet paper. There's so much more to it that people are like, they don't want to go through that process, and there's not spec homes to do it. And so we're just, again, I'm probably being redundant, but there's just no inventory. Like there's no new supply coming out, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, the inventory is up some, but these are the good houses are getting gobbled up.
Yeah, they are. I was, you're right. I mean, I was on a coaching session I told you about earlier this week, and I still have agents that I'm coaching that if they list a good home at a good price, they're still getting multiple offers.
Yeah.
Right now.
I'm seeing it in my business right now.
Absolutely.
People getting crushed.
Absolutely. So, we'll probably do another update early next week when we get the existing home sales report, because that is a big one. You're right, because as soon as that thing comes out, people have a field day with it.
Yeah, for sure.
So I want to look at the data. I want to give people something to compare it to, and so we'll report back on that.
Yep, for sure.
So until next time, appreciate you guys' attention.